It's great to be here. You've had a long day, and I don't know if you are ready for a confession, but that's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you 8 lessons that I learned in about 40 years of failure. Now, some of them I learned before starting Vertex, and part of the reason Vertex is successful is because I learned those lessons in other ventures. But many of them I learned during the 27 years I was involved with Vertex. Now, Vertex is a big company now. It's a Fortune 100 company, NASDAQ 100 company, S&P 500 company, about $9 billion in sales. And the company has around 4,800 employees, but there was a time at which it had one. It was me for 4 months. And I didn't consider it ethical to hire a second employee until I had some money. So I raised the first money by myself with no proprietary technology, no licenses, with, at the time, a chalkboard. But 4,800 employees now, and so you can say this story that you're going to hear is a little bit like the story of every lottery winner who tells you he's a math genius. But no, this is a story I'm going to tell you about the mistakes that led to this success, and the mistakes that if you know them, you can get to this success or more even faster. They say it wasn't always 4,800 employees. The picture on the left is me as a quite younger man, although I'm holding up well. And the picture in the middle is me at my first desk. We were too poor to have a file cabinet. That's not an exaggeration, so I kept everything in boxes on the floor. When you start a company, you have to learn a lot of new skills and new things you didn't expect to know. We moved into a laboratory that was a car parts garage before. It had one sink, and we wanted to build a laboratory. We were in it at the time. We did the renovation while we were occupying it. And I found out something about sinks that I did not know. It's that water runs downhill. And if you have one sink in a room and you want 15 sinks, every pipe has to be lower than the pipe behind it because water has to run downhill. So you end up having to dig deep trenches through 18 inches of concrete in order to get the drain pipes to keep going down. Now, I tell that story because I didn't know that going in, and so I miscalculated how long it would take. But I should have actually asked the question, what's involved in putting 15 sinks in a building that you're actually in at the time with employees? And the answer would have been, it's going to take drilling through the concrete. You might not want to be there, although we were. So there are many such revelations as you build a company. And I'm not going to talk about them all. I'm going to talk about, as they say, 8 mistakes that I either made during this Vertex journey or I made earlier than that and avoided making them during Vertex. This slide is probably pretty familiar to you all if you've built starting to build a business and a business plan. This is a classical diagram of how you put together a business. You go vision, mission, values, goals, strategies, tactics, plans. Almost everyone doing this spends about proportionally the amount of time on each one of those as is the area in that pyramid. In other words, they spend a very small amount of time on vision and mission, and they spend almost all their time on plans. I'm here to tell you, you have it exactly backwards. Mission beats strategy, strategy beats tactics, and plans are not very useful. The details of your business plan are probably the least important part of your business. Now, how can this be true? And How did I know this going into Vertex? I learned this actually much earlier because I worked for Merck, the large drug company, at a time when it was America's most admired company. That's how old I am. I worked for a drug company and it was America's most admired company. Even before I worked there, a man named George Merck, about a year after I was born, was on the front of Time magazine because he had revealed the Merck business plan, and Time magazine thought it was pretty important. He had given a speech at the Medical College of Virginia, and every Merck employee knows this speech. We try never to forget that medicine is for the people, it's not for the profits. The profits will follow, and if we've remembered that, they have never failed to appear. This is a business plan that's based on mission. Now, the cynics in the audience, and I'm sure there are one or two of you, might say, this was a guy who was already rich, he already had a big company, he could afford to be benevolent. The very next sentence is not as well known, but it's actually the most radical sentence that I think I have ever heard in business. So we try never to forget that medicine is for the people. It's not for the profits. The profits will follow, and if we've remembered that, they have never failed to appear. And the better we have remembered that, the larger the profits have been. He was not saying when you make money, you can think about patients. He says when you put patients first, the profits are bigger than when you don't do that. Mission and values and vision were more important than the planning that went into executing on that. Now, do I think plans have no use at all? Well, they have some use, but I'm not the only person who says that your business plan is the least important part of your activity. This fellow is a field marshal that invented modern warfare in Prussia. And he said no plan of operations survives contact with the enemy. It's a very important thing for you to remember. No matter how many plans you have, as soon as you start executing them, they're going to fail. And you're going to have to change your plans. So don't spend a whole lot of time on plans that are going to fail immediately. Now, a more sophisticated view, maybe a little more subtle view and a little less Prussian view, was from Dwight Eisenhower, of course, was later president. He said, in preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless. Phrase that I used earlier, and I saw some of you go, what? Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Now, how is that paradox true? Because the activity of planning has you engage your values and your mission and your vision, and it engages you in making decisions. And it's that process that's the most important part, not the plans that result. For reasons that the field marshal said, no plan survives contact with the enemy. That's the first lesson. The second one is be humble about your talents, but not about your aspirations. I find a lot of entrepreneurs are exactly the opposite. They brag, we're the best at, we're the fastest at, we have the biggest, we're the only one doing X, Y, Z. But that's about your talents and about your assets. Don't brag about your talents and your assets. Brag about what you're going to do with those. I'd love to have a tech entrepreneur give a presentation that says, we're using tech that was invented before 1970, and we're going to change the world. Because the change the world is the most important part of being an entrepreneur, not exhibiting technology, or your own smarts. So be humble about your talents, but not about your aspirations. Small visions get small support. So the reason to not restrain your aspirations and enunciate them is that's the way you'll get bigger support. Nobody wants to support a slightly bigger, slightly improvement, slightly faster, slightly better. I can eat into the market share of somebody else. I'm bored before you finish the sentence, and I certainly don't want to invest in it. If you want to do something important, you don't want to be where everybody else is. So I don't want to beat all those other fish. I want to be in a different bowl. I want to have a different goal. I don't want to be the best at something else that a lot of other people are doing. I want to do something that no one's doing. I want to be in my own fishbowl. Now, Vertex, this is our original business plan. The company was called Veritas. I deliberately named the company after the Harvard motto after I researched that Harvard had not copyrighted its motto. Lux et Veritas is the motto of Yale, and they've copyrighted that, so they can go after you. Harvard hadn't copyrighted it, but literally a week before funding of our first round, they never contacted me. The lawyer for our investment bank said, I was at a cocktail party and the general counsel from Harvard said he was upset. And if the general counsel of Harvard is upset, then I am upset. You have to change your name. So we had 3 days to change our name. We changed it to Vertex. But in our original business plan, and don't read all of this, but it says we're going to be a multidisciplinary biotechnology company focused on structural biology and organic chemistry to design and develop novel human therapeutics. I list a bunch of technologies, and here's where the vision was, the audacious vision. What are we going to do with that? We're going to build a new rational approach to drug design. Now, there were specific projects in the business plan, but the reason this business plan was funded is that sentence. It was the aspiration. Related to what I said is don't brag about technology, tout the value of what you're going to do with it. I'm bored with faster. I'm bored with better. I'm bored with bigger. Tell me the value of it. What are you going to do with it? And I'm going to use the technology to be faster doesn't count as an answer, okay? That's not a value. But don't brag about technology. Brag about what you intend to do with it. A warning also, if you really have new technology almost always arrives before its time. I used to have a bar bet I would get free drinks of. I've told it so many times I don't get as many free drinks, which is asking people to guess within 10 years when the first photo quality fax was sent. And photo quality, I've seen it. When you see it, you will swear it's a black and white photograph of the subject. Tells you it's a little bit earlier than today, but it's a black and white photograph of high resolution. When was the first photo quality fax sent? The answer is the late 19th century. The fax was invented in Paris in around 1820 and was actually perfected by about 1880. The fax machine wasn't an impact on society for almost another 100 years. So just a caution, it always pricks me. It's just like a chalk on a chalkboard. When someone says, we have a brand new technology that, and I go, well, you have no idea what your technology is going to do until you actually work with it a while. And if you do get it to work the first time of the way you do, you're lucky, and I'll come to luck in a minute. Number 4, every business is a people business. Every business. The difference between success and failure has very little to do with your business plan, has very little to do with your technology, and has everything to do with the people. Never hire positions. I hear entrepreneurs say, I'm out looking for a fill in the blank. You're doomed already. You're looking for a function. By the way, ChatGPT can probably do that function. Never hire positions, hire people. People don't come in functional units of 1.0, especially when you're building a business. Be very cautious about saying we need one of these and one of these and one of these and one of these. Start hiring people who are interested in your problem, and you may find out you don't need one of those ones you enunciated at the start, because collectively the group of you have the skills you need. And more importantly, you're more intertwined and you're more interdependent if you don't Start out putting people in silos with position descriptions. Don't hire positions, hire people. And please don't hire based on a resume. This is a mistake I made numerous times at Vertex. I fired my first 3 CMOs, chief medical officers, because it was a field, I'm an organic chemist, it was a field that I knew a lot about, but I was less familiar with it than the other expertises that I had hired up to that point. And I hired on resume. When I say hire on a resume, I literally said, this person has done more than that person. This person has done more than that person. This has more experience than that person. And then I hired the person with the most impressive resume. Total disaster. I suggest a methodology to you that's much simpler and actually easier to execute. When you're hiring a person who has a principal function, think about the minimum requirements. When I say minimum, I mean without that, they can't do the job. Not, I wish they had, but what are the minimum requirements? Get all the applicants who meet those minimum requirements, and then throw away the resumes. I don't care if someone has twice as many. If I said they had to have 3 academic papers and someone comes with 33, they're not 11 times better. They met the minimum requirements. Throw away the resumes. Well, what are you basing your hiring on then? It's all about people. It's all about mission and values and adherence to values in the team and signing on to the mission that you have for the company. I promise you, you'll end up with a better team that way. And you won't fire as many people. Number 5, every significant innovation is a lucky miracle. I'm very aware of that. There's a huge amount of luck connected to Vertex's success. And I know the paradox of the lottery winner who's convinced they're a genius. But there's something funny about luck. Even though every successful business needs luck, successful innovators are actually alert for luck. They're looking for luck. It's not expecting luck. They're looking for the unexpected positive, the unexpected opportunity, the thing that wasn't in the business plan, but is still related to the mission. And it turns out, if you look back in successful companies, successful innovators are luckier than normal. That's not, I think, ex post facto rationalization. It's actually cause and effect. So another negative about following your business plan as if it was a map is that you stop looking for luck. You stop looking for things that were unexpectedly positive, opportunities that you may not have anticipated. You're gonna need luck. Don't let luck pass you by if it comes near you. Number 6, and this is one of my favorites, especially in the time that you're raising money now. Do not sell data. Sell fear of missing out. Data always sells at a discount. Almost all of the funders, especially startup funders, will do diligence until you die. They always want to see another bit of data. Put up with them only so long, and then tell them you'll come back when your valuation is 10 times higher, and you'll be happy for them to invest in the next round, and then go talk to somebody else. Do not try to prove that you have the value that you're asking for. You'll never do it. Prove that the value you're asking for is a bargain compared to what you're going to be in the future. Sell fear of missing out. Don't sell the value of the assets, the people that you can prove you have, because that always sells at a discount. And although you can make money on the other side by buying dollars for 90 cents, you can't make a great business by selling dollars for 90 cents. Number 7, related to this, is Selling is not about convincing someone to buy what you have. What is it? What is selling? My dad was a technical salesman. He was a textile chemist, and he would go to Paris and New York, come back with the latest colors and fabrics, beautiful fabrics that were too expensive for people to make in North Carolina, and we have to get that purple not onto Scalamandre silk, but I have to get that purple into rayon. How do you get that purple into rayon? That's what his specialty was. He would go around to dye mills all around the southeast, and they're no longer there, and sell his expertise. Well, what was he selling? He was not selling what he had. He was trying to find out what their problem was. Selling is about solving a problem that someone had before you walked in. I've done around $4.5 billion in biotech deals. I've never sold a biotech deal to anybody. I thought I did. I've signed some enormous deals that I thought, boy, I did a great job convincing them that we were just the best partner, blah. And then I found out that a month before I walked in, they had had a big meeting and they decided to do a partnership of that kind with someone who would walk in their door. I happened to walk in their door and said I was the solution to the problem that they had. Now, you're probably talking, a lot of you are talking to startup venture capitalists or even angels, but it's particularly the venture capital funds that fund startups. What is their problem? Are they scared of losing money? No, actually, they're not scared of losing money. Their business model assumes that some of their investments are going to go to zero, which is, by the way, why you never want to sell data, because that's very uninteresting to them. Fear of missing out is what their problem is. So especially for venture funds that are the larger venture funds, you've got to assume that they're scared of missing out. Now, I've sold this to entrepreneurs who said, I talked to XYZ venture fund and they weren't interested. And I asked them the same question. Do you know what year their fund is in? They went, what do you mean the year the fund is in? Well, you're talking to people in a room who have concatenated funds, but they're probably thinking about investing in fund 6, which is a 10-year fund. Are they in year 2 of that fund or are they in year 8 of that fund? If they're in year 2 of that fund, they have a very high tolerance for ambiguity, a very high tolerance for timeline. If you're talking to those same people who are in year 8 of a fund, they have no tolerance for those things. That's not the problem they're trying to solve. They have to start distributing their investments in 2 years. So you tell them I have a plan I have a vision, it's going to take 7 years. You go to somebody else. You wasted your time because you didn't find out what their problem was. So find out the problem of the investor and see how your mission and your values is a solution to their problem. That's what sales is all about. And the last one, and this one you knew, this is a quote from my father who told me at a very young age, and I learned this one. I didn't have to learn it in failure at Vertex. You can make every mistake in business, and he would always pause and say, and you will, except you can never run out of money. Now, you say, that's obvious. Of course money's important. No. You can never have enough money. I talk to entrepreneurs who say, well, I have enough, I'm so tired of fundraising, I've got enough money to get to my next milestone. I look at them and say, you do not have enough money to get to your next milestone. Your plan says you have enough money to get to your next milestone. I guarantee you don't have enough money to get to your next milestone. Never stop raising money until you are comfortably, reliably cash flow positive. You're always raising money every day. Vertex raised $250 million the evening that Lehman Brothers collapsed. We raised it in 2 hours, between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., when the world was coming to an end. We raised it because someone would give it to us, which is the only thing you should discern. Will someone give you money? I want it. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. So those are my 8 lessons. And I'm going to close with, and then take whatever questions for time we have, with some other wisdom from some other people. By the way, nobody ever died of dilution. I should mention this. I hear people saying, I can't take money because it'll dilute my existing shareholders. I don't care. That is not death. Nobody ever died of dilution. So just never say that. It does not matter what dilution is nothing. You should never care a minute about dilution. So some other advice from some smart people, and this is career advice. This is actually advice from someone you probably should recognize, Barack Obama, who at a very recent interview with Fortune magazine said, just learn how to get stuff done. I do run across entrepreneurs who have fantastic ideas, and they're so cerebral, and they've got it all worked out, and they haven't done anything. Remember, I wasn't impressed with plans, but I'm impressed with execution. Get stuff done. And it almost doesn't matter what it is. Get a good lease on space. Get a good picture on the wall. Get stuff done. And learn how to get more stuff done. That is from Barack Obama. Back in the last century, in the 20th century, this man you probably recognize had a more philosophical bit of career advice, which was strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value. A theme I think I've come across through this whole presentation. Planning for success, your own success particularly, is the least reliable way of being successful. Much like George Merck said, our profits were the largest when we didn't think about profits. I'm paraphrasing him. You'll be most successful when you stop planning to be successful and plan instead to be of value. That from Albert Einstein. And my last bit of wisdom from other folks goes back to the 17th century. This from Blaise Pascal. Blaise Pascal was the mathematician, philosopher, inventor of probability theory, inventor of game theory, and if your French is just a little rusty, his quote is, "Imagination is the source of everything. It makes beauty, justice, and happiness, which is the whole of the world." And I wish your imagination can bring beauty, justice, and happiness to the whole world.
Yeah, how'd you take your company public in 2 years? It's like 2 years.
We had no idea. Our quote plan, we were founded in 1989, January of 1989. I figured that according to what I knew we were going to do, that we maybe had a chance of going to the public markets in probably about 1997 or 8. I'd probably do 7 rounds of venture capital. I'd dilute the hell out of everybody. I went to the JP Morgan healthcare conference in San Francisco in 1991. We had only been operating about a year, and it took us a while to get labs built. About a year and 3 months, actually. Not a single person in the company had completed a lab notebook, and we had no results to speak of. But I went to the JP Morgan conference it was an investor conference. I thought I needed to know what those are about. And the theme of that conference, I remember it like it was yesterday. There will never be another biotech IPO in the history of mankind. That was an aberration. It will never happen again. That source of funds is gone. Get another plan. I went, oh, okay. 3 months later, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals does a surprise $99 million IPO. It blows out. It goes doubles the first day, and the world was a different place. And people knocked on my door and said, we can take you public. And I went, what? Had no idea what they were talking about. Had no idea how it was possible, but I quickly got to understand by asking the question, what are investors looking for? They're not looking for a drug product. My first drug product came out ahead of my own personal schedule, which I thought it would take 11 years. It came out 10 years after we were founded, which is light speed. But I thought it would take a drug product or an imminent drug product to do. But no, fear of missing out was good enough. And it turns out, luck, I was in a category. Always remember, find out which category your company is in. It may not be the one you think. I thought I was starting a pharmaceutical company. Turned out I was starting a biotech company. I didn't know what biotech was. I thought a biotech company is a company that made proteins. We made small molecules, we made pills. So it turns out that we were a biotech company, and that's what the investors told me. I went, okay, I'm a biotech company then. And we did an offering in what was the worst month that entire year, and had a devilish time getting it done, and got it done at the bottom end of the range. And then 4.5 months later, we did a second offering at twice that price, and literally had not accomplished a single thing in between. People were just willing to give us the money, so we did it. So going public is difficult. It's not for the faint of heart, but you learn a whole nother group of people who have problems that you can solve. I don't mean the people your product's going to be for. I mean another group of investors, and they're interesting. Nobody who's ever invested in, nobody that I've ever sold Vertex stock to has ever lost money.
I'm curious, when you stopped hiring on resume for your CMO, how did you pick the right person for the position?
I picked somebody who I liked, who had a passion for the patient, who had a passion for, who was a very high science MD. That's because we were pretty high sciencey things we were doing, but he was sincere, but he was always the patient first. And he had a pretty good resume. He'd have made the cut in my new methodology, but on the resume, he wouldn't have been in the top 10 if I had ranked the resumes. But I just used a different method. His values were aligned with the values of the company, is what I would put it. And I didn't check that on the first 3 times. I thought if someone said, I want to move my family and move to your town and get a job, and I thought that already meant that they bought into the values, but that's not true. Some people just working for the money. It's not a good thing.
So on slide 8, you mentioned that you're always fundraising.
Yeah.
And basically, even when you're not fundraising, you should be fundraising, and you should be looking to try and take money and never to say no to it. But I was curious, when we were actively fundraising, obviously we're always fundraising. We had an opportunity to take money from someone that I think if we had taken it would have been detrimental to us. So I'm just curious what parameters you look for in not taking money, and what would deter you from taking an investor.
So it's a great question, and I think you have to do a check with certain kind of values, and even for investors, but not as hard as for an employee. I never ran into that situation, so I don't have any field advice for you. It turns out that if you really sell mission and values, you don't attract those people very much, turns out. And maybe that's the reason I don't have a lot of experience with it. Those people just leave because they'd rather buy a dollar for 90 cents. If I'm not selling a dollar for 90 cents, they tend to not be in the room. I think that's my smart ass answer. Is that what I'll do? Okay. Get into another room. Yeah, get into another room. The other thing about raising money is that I hear this a lot. We went to 7 venture capitalists and they all turned us down. What's wrong? I went, 7? Are you kidding me? I went to 107. 107. I went to 40 venture capitalists in San Francisco. Not a single one invested. And then I went to another city and went through them all again. So when I say you're always fundraising, it doesn't mean that if you're good at it, it's really easy. But I'll close this answer with something that really annoys startup entrepreneurs. And it's late, and I can do it, which is raising money is the easiest part of what you're doing. And that is a threat about how hard it is to do the rest of it. So if you're tiring with the difficulty of raising money, you don't have the guts to do the rest of it. But I think you do. You just need to get the right attitude. It's hard, but if you follow some of my rules, it becomes a lot easier, I think.